If your clients, customers can rely on you for honest feedback and honest interaction, and you're doing it with passion and enthusiasm, I think it's hard not to be successful. I've met with several potential customers, and they'll say, well, we want to do this. And in my head, I go, well, that's going to be expensive, and they want to do it. That's great. And I go, no, that's not going to work for you. I would suggest you not do that. Well, why not? Well, here's why you shouldn't do it. You want to just keep helping other people. So to me, that's what's happened in my life. And I'm sure every entrepreneur has their own story to tell. But even today, if I meet with a potential client and they want us to do something I don't think is in their best interest, I'll let them know.
Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thankz, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thankz.com, that's THANKZ.com, with the subject line A Founder's Life, and you'll receive $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited today to be joined by Stephen Muro. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself to the guests?
Hi, I'm Stephen, and I'm a founder and president of a marketing agency called Fusion.
Excellent. What I'd love to hear is both your journey that brought you to where you are today, and then a little more about your agency, how you're helping clients.
Sure. Well, my background is steeped in consumer products. I worked for L'Oréal, a division of L'Oréal, a division of Procter, and I worked basically in health and beauty. That was the arena I was in. And then there was lots of consolidation going on. And I realized instead of being a VP of marketing, I was a VP of letting people go. And I love marketing. So I said to myself, I think it's time to do my own thing. So in 1997, I started Fusion Marketing and started working a little bit in health and beauty. But shortly thereafter, I got involved with the produce industry. That's basically fruits and vegetables and fresh foods that they sell at the grocery store. And that sort of took on a life of its own. And today, that's really where we're at, is in that space. And I couldn't be happier marketing things that are good for people, healthy for people.
That leads well into health, but we'll get there in a second. So talk to us about what family means to you.
Well, gosh, isn't that everything? And there's a couple different families, right? There's my family, like my wife and my 3 sons, and watching them on their journey because they're adults, and watching them open their own companies and things like that is very exciting. And that's the best gift you could get at the holidays, is being with your family. But the other family is my work family. And I feel just as close to them almost as my other family. I have lots of younger people working with me. They're starting their families. I think it behooves me to make sure that they're doing well, that they are being successful. And I try to do everything I can to help them achieve their dreams. The old pay it forward kind of mentality, I guess you'd say.
And how about health? How does health look for you?
Health is good for me, knock on wood. I've been fortunate. I had an operation when I was 6 to have my tonsils out, and that's the only medical emergency I've ever had. So I feel very fortunate that I've been relatively healthy. I get an occasional cold or something like that, like lots of people do, but have not had any significant incidences of anything. And I sort of contribute that to a few things. One is genetics. One is also trying to eat a well-balanced meal with lots of plant-based foods. And then the other is exercise. My whole life, I've always been into cycling. And so from the time I was 12 or 13, I would cycle to school and back. As I got older and got married, I'd buy bikes for my kids, and they would jump on their bike, and we'd do a 60-mile bike ride. And that's always what we've done. And so all of my children are into that sort of sport as well. So health, yeah, it's important. It's important for everybody, right? If you don't have your health, what do you have? So,
Very true. Are you out there doing centuries with your kids?
Never a century with my children. No, 60 was about the most. But when I was doing it, they were only like 11 or 12 years old. So 60 miles was a long way for them. I mean, they really, and lots of hills. So being in California, there's lots of hills. So never just a flat ride. If it was a flat ride, it would be easy to do a century. But when you're climbing half the time and then descending the other half, it can be kind of exhausting.
That's true. You can always make it 62 miles and call it a metric century.
That's right, metric 100.
What do you, I mean, biking, I guess, part of it, but what do you like to do for fun?
For fun. Well, as you and I had discussed earlier, I'm into like old high tech things, old computers, things like that. I have an avid love of old vehicles. So I have a few old cars and a few old motorcycles, and I love working with them and taking them out for a ride because, today's cars, they're beautiful and they're great and they do everything, including drive themselves, but it's not much of a driving experience when you're isolated from the world. And these older cars, you're definitely not isolated. You feel every bump. You have to roll down the window if it gets hot. So it's a totally different experience. So I love that. And I like going to movies too. I like seeing movies. So
Lovely.
yeah.
I like a nice car, as in, I'm not into super fancy cars, but I do like something that's comfortable. And I actually quite like a car that pretty much drives itself. I'm not a big driver. I used to have someone I know who was a director of one of our companies, and he had a lovely old, I think it was an old Mercedes, but really old one. And what he'd done, he'd made two subtle changes. One was he actually had installed air conditioning,
Oh, wow.
but he hadn't changed it. He literally, you could flick a switch, which enabled the air conditioning. It looked like an old fashioned switch, but he'd actually put air conditioning in. And the second thing was he'd put in a modern radio, but he'd kept the faceplate from the old one and it magnetically attached in front of it. So it could still look like the original, but
Yeah.
a couple of subtle changes that allowed for a slightly more luxurious
Yes,
version
probably
as well.
Bluetooth and other things, right? Yes, I love that. That's fun to do. I've had lots of cars over the time. I mean, I've had cars that you might know, but maybe other people wouldn't. Which, like, I just sold recently my Citroen DS 23, which is a French car that is just magnificent. And if you live in Europe, they're great to have because there's so many mechanics. I live outside of Los Angeles, and in all of Southern California, there's two mechanics, and they're both older than me. So you have to get something that's a little more practical, I'm afraid. But you cycle through the cars. My favorite one, though, is I've got a 1963 Volkswagen that I bought when I was in high school, and I still drive it. So that makes me happy. I always used to hear older guys when I was a young man say, "I wish I had my first car." Well, I do.
Well, you're almost a hoarder, but of not small things. I mean, it's your first computer, your first car.
That's what
It's
my wife
impressive.
says. Fortunately, they're just not strewn all over the place. There's a little place for each one, but it's fun.
And for you, how does a balanced life look?
Well, for me, it's always working and always being at home and always traveling. And what do I mean by that? I know so many people, they get to a certain age and they go, well, it's time to retire. And I always say, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to do all the things I never got a chance to do. Well, what's that? Well, I'm thinking about it. And to me, that just is not very appealing. So I continue to work in my company. I don't work every single day, but I do work. I still oversee the team. And then I spend more time with my wife, who's recently retired. And I get to travel more. We love to travel. So every year we're doing several trips. So it's being able to do all the things I wish I could have done in my 20s and 30s, but now I can actually do them. And I know exactly what they all are. The various trips outside the country, a few trips inside the country, spending more time with friends and parties and socializing. That's important for me and my wife. And so that's sort of what a balanced life looks like to me. You do some exercise, you do all of those things, basically. It's trying to do as much as I can while I can. I always say, we have an expression in my family, do it before your wheels fall off. And I know people that I've said to them that exactly that, do it before your wheels fall off. And in one case in particular, the person said, oh, I'll wait. And then when it came time to actually retire, just didn't work out at all. And she's passed on. No regrets is the opportunity.
Definitely. And what has been a pivotal moment in your life?
Oh, gosh, a pivotal moment. Well, I guess when I my whole life, I'd always thought, I want to start a company. But I could never figure out what it was because when I was younger, I was always thinking like, what new product could I invent? Well, I'm not much of an inventor, but I suddenly realized that as much as I love doing marketing, there were industries where marketing just wasn't really in play very much. And I loved research. That's one of our main attributes at Fusion is we do this research, and then we turn that research into marketing communications, and we help the company that we did it for publicize their research and their findings. So suddenly I realized, hey, there are industries that don't do this, and that's sort of why I got into the produce industry, is because at the time people only thought of sales more than marketing in that industry. And when we started bringing more sophisticated research and communications, they glommed onto us and we glommed onto them. And so I guess it's that founding of the company is a pivotal moment in terms of business, in terms of personal life, meeting my wife. Gosh, her name is Adelaide. And Adelaide is amazing. When I first met her, I said something to her and I don't even remember what I said. And she looked at me and she said, "Hey, please don't say that to me again. And here's why." And she explained to me why she didn't want me to say that to her again. And I was so used to going on these dates and people would say, "Well, I'm mad at you, Stephen." Why? Well, if you don't know, then I'm not going to tell you. So I could never figure that out. Well, if you're not going to tell me, how am I going to learn? So the relationship with Adelaide has always been very straightforward. And I appreciate that dimension of her very much.
What's one piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Have a passion, have enthusiasm. I think if you're enthusiastic about what you're doing, you will just keep going at it. I remember when I first started the company, I started it out of my house. And we had this little loft area, and I would go to work early in the morning, and then we would take the kids to school. See you later. Come back home, go back to work, then go pick up the kids, eat dinner with the family, and then go back to work again. Not because I had to, because I was passionate about what I was doing. I was so enthusiastic. And if you're enthusiastic and love what you do, you'll be successful. You just need to keep at it. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, I should start a company because I can make a lot of money." That's not the right position to take. The money will come if you're doing all the right things. I've met with several potential customers, and they'll say, "Well, we want to do this." And in my head, I go, "Well, that's going to be expensive and they want to do it. That's great." And I go, "No, that's not going to work for you. I would suggest you not do that." "Well, why not?" "Well, here's why you shouldn't do it." So you have to be, if your clients, customers can rely on you for honest feedback and honest interaction, and you're doing it with passion and enthusiasm, I think it's hard not to be successful. You want to just keep helping other people. So to me, that's what's happened in my life. And I'm sure every entrepreneur has their own story to tell. But even today, if I meet with a potential client and they want us to do something I don't think is in their best interest, I'll let them know.
That's good to hear. And how can people find you?
Well, on the internet, which is gowithfusion.com. Gowithfusion, FUSION.com. And you can read about us and see what we do. And if anybody out there, I'm not looking for you to say, "I want to be in your industry," or "I want to use your services." If there's any entrepreneurs out there that just want some feedback on what they're doing, I'm happy to talk to them. I mean, I'm always happy to help people out and to try to get them going into their own business if that's what they're truly interested in.
Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
And thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and leave a review.